November 14th, 1941. Wehrmacht. Forward command post, 16 kilometers north of Odessa. Oberst Friedrich Hartmann stood before a map of the besieged city, red circles marking recent supply depot attacks. Behind him, 3 junior officers reviewed casualty reports from the previous week. Someone had been systematically eliminating German reconnaissance teams. 17 men in 6 days, all shot from concealed positions, all killed with single rifle rounds to the head or chest. Intelligence suggests we're dealing with Soviet marksmen, Hartmann said, tapping the map. Probably conscripts with hunting rifles, taking desperate shots before retreating. Hauptmann Klaus Weber laughed, setting down his coffee. Women, actually. Our radio intercepts confirm the Bolsheviks are sending female university students to the front with rifles. History majors and factory girls playing soldier. The room erupted in chuckles. They're calling them snipers, Weber continued. Can you imagine? These girls probably can't even lift a Mosin Nagant properly, much less hit anything beyond 50 meters. Give them a month of winter cold and proper return fire, and they'll be begging to go back to their sewing machines. Hartmann nodded, allowing himself a smile. The Red Army must be truly desperate. Still, have the men exercise basic caution during reconnaissance patrols. Even amateur shooters can get lucky occasionally. What Oberst Hartmann didn't know was that 500 meters southeast of his command post, partially buried beneath dead leaves and positioned behind a fallen birch log, 25-year-old Lyudmila Pavlichenko had already acquired him in her telescopic sight. She had been motionless in that position for 6 hours, waiting for the precise moment when the afternoon sun would be behind her, eliminating scope glint. This would be kill number 43 on her path to an eventual 309. She was a former Kyiv University history student who had joined a shooting club at 14 simply to prove a boastful neighbor boy wrong. She had logged over 800 hours of marksmanship training before the war started. In the 75 days since Germany invaded, she had killed 187 enemy soldiers in and around Odessa, averaging more than 2 confirmed kills per day. And she had been specifically tracking Oberst Hartmann's routine for the past 4 days, noting his habit of standing near the same window at exactly 1500 hours. At 1502 hours that afternoon, Friedrich Hartmann collapsed with a bullet through his chest. The German officers who rushed to his side never located the shooter. Within 48 hours, 3 more officers from that same command post would be dead, each killed from a different position, each by the same sniper they had dismissed as an amateur playing soldier. German sniper doctrine, perfected through bitter experience in the trenches of the Great War and refined through 2 decades of quiet development, represented the pinnacle of precision warfare. After Versailles prohibited formal military training, the Wehrmacht had quietly cultivated marksmanship through civilian hunting clubs and shooting societies, creating a reservoir of skilled riflemen who could be rapidly mobilized. When formal sniper schools were re-established in 1942, they codified 20 years of accumulated wisdom into a comprehensive training system. Students spent 3 to 4 months learning their craft at facilities like Judenburg in Austria, where instructors built elaborate shooting gardens, complete with miniature villages, moving targets activated by ropes and wires, and realistic battlefield scenarios. Every candidate was expected to hit man-sized targets consistently at 325 to 435 yards before graduating. They fired purpose-manufactured, effect-firing ammunition, special rounds with carefully measured propellant charges, and heavy match-grade projectiles that provided superior ballistics to standard infantry cartridges. Their Kar 98K Mauser rifles were equipped with Zeiss Zielvier 4-power or 6-power telescopic sights, the finest optical equipment available to any military. The doctrine emphasized patience, concealment, and systematic methodology, German snipers were taught to operate independently, making their own tactical decisions, selecting their own hides, and engaging targets of opportunity based on battlefield value rather than command directives. Every kill required confirmation from an officer or senior NCO before being officially recorded in the sniper's personal logbook. The system was designed to create professional, accountable, traceable, military marksmen. By 1941, German sniper instructors believed they had created an invincible methodology. While German trainers refined their doctrine in Austrian shooting gardens, Lyudmila Pavlichenko learned her craft under conditions they would have considered impossible. She received no formal military sniper training whatsoever. When she arrived at the Odessa recruiting office on June 25, 1941, 3 days after Germany invaded, the registrar tried repeatedly to assign her as a nurse or clerk, despite her shooting certificates from civilian marksmanship clubs. Only after she pulled a Voroshilov sharpshooter badge from her pocket, documentation proving she had completed basic marksmanship courses at age 14, did they grudgingly hand her a Mosin Nagant rifle and point toward two Romanian officers working with German forward observers 400 meters away. "Shoot them," they said. "Then we'll talk about enlisting you." She killed both officers with 2 shots, never included those kills in her eventual 309 total, and was immediately assigned to the Red Army's 25th Rifle Division. Her first day in combat, August 8, 1941, near Belyaevka, she watched a young Soviet soldier take position beside her in a defensive position. He smiled at her, made a joke about the weather, then had his head torn open by a German sniper's bullet before he could fire a single round. Pavlichenko, paralyzed by shock for perhaps 15 seconds, suddenly realized the German sniper was scanning for a second target. She raised her rifle and shot twice, killing 2 German scouts attempting to advance on their position. Those were kills 1 and 2 of 309. She learned the rest through experience, watching what worked and discarding what didn't, developing techniques through survival rather than instruction. This was kill number 43 on her march toward 309. By November 1941, when German officers were still joking about history majors playing soldier, she had perfected methods those officers' own snipers would not learn in Austrian training facilities for another 2 years. The German requirement for confirmed, witnessed, officially documented kills created a system of accountability but also imposed severe tactical constraints. A Wehrmacht sniper working with an official spotter, both following doctrinal procedures, would identify a target, calculate range and wind, coordinate the shot, take it, and then both men would carefully document the kill in official paperwork that required officers' signatures. This system ensured accuracy, but meant German snipers often declined shots when proper witnesses weren't available. The confirmation requirement also meant German marksmen favored positions where spotters could safely observe, typically more exposed locations that allowed sightlines for 2 sets of eyes. The process emphasized quality documentation over operational flexibility. Pavlichenko operated under no such constraints. Soviet doctrine recognized any kill witnessed by any soldier, creating a far more fluid confirmation system. More importantly, she often worked entirely alone, making her own tactical decisions without consulting superiors or coordinating with spotters. During the siege of Sevastopol, where she racked up 122 of her 309 confirmed kills, she would disappear into no man's land for days at a time, positioned 600 to 1,000 feet in front of the Soviet lines, completely unsupported. Her methods were entirely self-developed. She described one technique in later interviews that illustrated how differently she conceptualized the sniper's role. In summer, 2 of us would depart at 3:30 in the morning. One sniper pair occupies one place, another pair, another place, 300 to 400 meters away. No talking between us, no whistling, no moving, no smoking, nothing is allowed at all. Hey, she would lie motionless for 8, 10, 12 hours at a stretch, controlling her breathing, ignoring harassment fire, waiting for the single moment when an enemy sniper believed the threat had passed and made himself visible. German doctrine taught patience, but their 3-month training programs could not replicate the absolute stillness Pavlichenko achieved through sheer will. She could see her targets clearly enough to distinguish eye color and estimate age through her scope, meaning they could see her equally well if she made even slight movements. A sniper doesn't get a second shot, she explained. This was the fundamental difference. German snipers were trained. Pavlichenko was forged. An official Wehrmacht tactical assessment from December 1941, distributed to Eastern Front commanders, analyzed the unexpected effectiveness of Soviet sniper operations. The document acknowledged that Red Army snipers were achieving higher than anticipated casualty rates, despite inferior equipment and minimal formal training. However, the assessment attributed this primarily to the Soviets' willingness to accept heavy sniper casualties, essentially treating snipers as expendable reconnaissance assets rather than precision specialists. Soviet employment of female marksmen and inadequately trained volunteers indicates severe shortage of qualified male personnel, the report stated. Their methods sacrifice proper concealment and tactical patience in favor of aggressive, often suicidal engagement. While individual Soviet snipers may achieve temporary local successes through reckless exposure, systematic German counter-sniper operations, employing properly trained specialists with superior optics, will inevitably neutralize this threat. Current Soviet sniper losses estimated at 70 to 80% within first 6 weeks of deployment. This attrition rate renders their sniper program operationally unsustainable. Recommend continued emphasis on thorough training and methodical counter-sniper protocols. Soviet desperation tactics require careful response, but do not represent genuine peer threat to Wehrmacht marksmanship doctrine. The assessment concluded by noting that female Soviet snipers would likely be withdrawn from frontline service once more realistic Soviet command recognized the futility of the program. The document was signed by 3 senior Wehrmacht intelligence officers and circulated to division-level commands throughout the Eastern Front. While German intelligence drafted reports dismissing Soviet snipers as desperate amateurs, Lyudmila Pavlichenko was systematically destroying their officer corps. Between August and December 1941, during the siege of Odessa alone, she killed 187 Axis soldiers, including 27 officers and 14 enemy snipers. The Germans had made a fundamental misunderstanding about what made an effective sniper. They assumed superior equipment and formal training would triumph over crude weapons and improvised tactics. They were correct in recognizing that most Soviet snipers suffered enormous casualties and brief operational lifespans. What they failed to account for was the small percentage who survived those first brutal weeks, the ones who learned faster than doctrine could teach, the ones who developed instincts that no shooting garden could replicate. By the time German intelligence was writing reports about unsustainable attrition rates, Pavlichenko had already compiled more confirmed kills than 90% of Wehrmacht snipers would achieve in their entire careers. This was approximately kill 150 on her path toward Mach 309. The Germans knew her name by then. They tried to bribe her first, broadcasting messages over loudspeakers across the front lines. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, come over to us. We will give you plenty of chocolate and make you a German officer. When bribery failed, they escalated to threats. On her final day at Sevastopol, June 1942, before a mortar round sent shrapnel through her face and forced her evacuation, German loudspeakers broadcast their final message to her. If we catch you, we will tear you into 309 pieces and scatter them to the winds. She was genuinely delighted. They knew her score exactly. The Germans had made a fatal assessment error, one that would cost them hundreds of their best soldiers before they understood it. They had calculated training duration, equipment quality, confirmation procedures, and systematic doctrine. They had measured optical precision, ammunition consistency, and documented methodology. They calculated everything except one variable. You cannot train the absolute stillness required to lie unmoving for 12 hours in freezing mud while enemy harassment fire kicks dirt into your face. You cannot learn in a shooting garden the psychological resilience to watch a friend die beside you, and then, seconds later, make the precise sight picture calculation necessary to kill the shooter who killed him. You cannot teach in 3 months what Lyudmila Pavlichenko learned in 3 days of combat that would have killed 90% of German sniper school graduates. German doctrine created skilled technicians. The Eastern Front created something doctrine couldn't account for, and Lyudmila Pavlichenko had become the deadliest embodiment of that something, one target at a time, 309 times, before the Germans even understood what they were facing. The absolute stillness that German snipers learned in Austrian shooting gardens over 3 months of instruction was only the first of 3 advantages Lyudmila Pavlichenko possessed. German sniper training emphasized patience as a teachable skill, something that could be systematically cultivated through controlled exercises and progressive difficulty scenarios. Instructors at facilities like Judenburg built elaborate training environments where students practiced remaining motionless for extended periods, learning to control breathing, suppress involuntary muscle tremors, and maintain focus despite discomfort. A typical German sniper school graduate had logged perhaps 200 hours of concealment training before reaching the Eastern Front. This was considered comprehensive preparation. The methodology was sound, the instruction professional, the results measurable. German snipers deployed with confidence that their training had prepared them for the psychological demands of extended static observation. What German doctrine taught as technique, Pavlichenko learned as survival instinct through conditions no training program could replicate. On October 22, 1941, during the siege of Odessa, she detected movement in a partially collapsed factory building 400 meters from her position. The shape was wrong, the shadow inconsistent with the rubble pattern she had memorized over the previous day of observation. An enemy sniper had taken position there, likely hunting for Soviet officers during the daily command rotation. Pavlichenko had 2 choices: withdraw and report the position, or eliminate the threat herself. She chose elimination. For the next 72 hours, she remained in the same hide, a shallow depression behind shattered bricks and twisted metal, moving only to adjust her sight picture by millimeters as the sun's angle changed. She urinated without changing position. She ate nothing. When artillery barrages shook the ground and sent dust cascading into her eyes, she did not blink. The German sniper was equally patient, equally skilled, equally committed to the duel. But on the 3rd day, October 25th, at approximately 14:30 hours, he made one movement too many, shifting his weight to relieve a muscle cramp. Pavlichenko fired once. This was kill number 63 on her march toward 309. German training manuals recommended 12-hour maximum duration for sniper hides before rotation. Pavlichenko had just spent 3 days motionless, learning something no instructor could teach: that patience is not duration, but absolute commitment to stillness, regardless of cost. The second advantage emerged from what appeared to be Pavlichenko's greatest tactical weakness compared to German sniper doctrine. Wehrmacht snipers operated within a sophisticated support structure designed to maximize effectiveness and survivability. Every German sniper deployed with an assigned spotter, creating 2-man teams that could share observation duties, provide mutual security, and confirm kills according to official documentation requirements. The system ensured accountability, reduced individual stress, and theoretically increased survival rates through mutual support. German doctrine emphasized that lone snipers suffered disproportionate casualty rates and achieved lower confirmed kill counts due to fatigue, degraded situational awareness, and inability to engage targets while maintaining security. The data supporting this conclusion was substantial. German records showed that paired snipers survived an average of 40% longer than solo operators and achieved 30% higher confirmed kill rates. The methodology appeared unassailable. Pavlichenko systematically violated every principle of this doctrine and achieved results that rendered it irrelevant. During the defense of Sevastopol, between November 1941 and June 1942, she routinely operated 600 to 1,000 feet in front of Soviet defensive positions, completely alone, for periods extending beyond 72 hours. She made her own tactical decisions without consulting superiors, selected her own targets based on battlefield value judgments, and extracted herself from compromised positions using routes she had personally reconnoitered. On March 14, 1942, German intelligence identified her general operating area and deployed 5 soldiers equipped with PPSH submachine guns to set an ambush along a road she was known to use. The trap was professionally executed, with interlocking fields of fire and covered withdrawal routes. Pavlichenko detected the ambush through a combination of unnatural shadow patterns and the faint metallic click of a weapon safety being released. Rather than retreat, she analyzed the geometry of their positions, identified a small depression offering defilade from their weapons, and repositioned to that location in absolute silence over the course of 40 minutes. From that position, their bullets could not reach her, but she had clear sight lines to 3 of the 5 soldiers. She killed the first one with a shot to the head. The second died before the sound of the first rifle crack had fully dissipated. The third attempted to suppress her position with automatic fire, but exposed himself in doing so, and died with a bullet through his chest. The remaining 2 soldiers made the rational decision to flee. Pavlichenko killed 1 more as they retreated, then calmly collected 4 PPSH submachine guns from the dead soldiers and returned to Soviet lines. This was approximately kill 140 on her path toward 309. German doctrine would have required her to wait for spotter support, call for backup, or withdraw to report enemy positions. Independence from doctrine had saved her life and eliminated 4 enemy soldiers in the process. But the third advantage proved most devastating to German morale and revealed the fundamental difference between training and terror. The Wehrmacht understood psychological warfare in tactical terms. Snipers disrupted enemy command and control, created uncertainty, and degraded combat effectiveness through selective elimination of high-value targets. German sniper instructors taught their students that fear was a byproduct of effective marksmanship, not an objective in itself. The sniper's role was tactical, not theatrical. Proper German snipers maintained professional detachment, documented their kills with clinical precision, and avoided behavior that might be construed as unnecessary provocation or cruelty. This approach aligned with Wehrmacht self-image as professional soldiers engaged in legitimate military operations. Pavlichenko weaponized fear itself, and the Germans responded with a combination of rage and desperation that demonstrated how thoroughly she had penetrated their psychological defenses. By January 1942, German radio operators were broadcasting messages specifically directed at her across the front lines near Sevastopol. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, come over to us. We will give you plenty of chocolate and make you a German officer. Eh? The offers were repeated multiple times per day, suggesting German command believed bribery might succeed where force had failed. When she ignored these inducements, the messages changed tone. As her confirmed kill count approached 200, German loudspeaker broadcasts escalated from offers to threats. On her final day at Sevastopol, June 1942, hours before mortar shrapnel tore through her face and forced her evacuation, German soldiers broadcast their most specific threat yet. If we catch you, we will tear you into 309 pieces and scatter them to the winds. Pavlichenko later described her reaction to this message with genuine delight. They knew her exact score. The Germans were tracking her personally, dedicating intelligence resources to monitoring one individual sniper's kill count and broadcasting that information across the battlefield. This was not tactical communication. This was acknowledgement that she had become something beyond a military threat. She had become a nightmare that German soldiers discussed in hushed voices, a presence that transformed routine patrols into potentially fatal encounters with an enemy they could neither see nor predict. Her counter-sniper operations particularly demonstrated how she turned German methodology against itself. Wehrmacht sniper training included extensive instruction on deception techniques, using dummies to draw fire, employing decoys to reveal enemy positions, and creating false targets to waste enemy ammunition. German snipers were taught to recognize these same tricks when employed against them. The training was thorough, the techniques proven through extensive field testing. Pavlichenko encountered all of them, and never once fell for the deceptions. During one extended duel with a German sniper near Sevastopol, her opponent attempted the standard progression of tricks. First came the helmet on a stick, raised briefly above cover to simulate a careless soldier. Pavlichenko observed it, calculated the angle, and waited. Then the German sniper released a cat, allowing it to wander casually through the contested space, suggesting the area was safe and unobserved. Pavlichenko watched the cat, did nothing. Finally, the German deployed a full human-sized dummy, dressed in Wehrmacht uniform, positioned to appear as a soldier, taking casual observation of the area. Pavlichenko studied it for several hours, noted how it never shifted weight or adjusted position in response to changing sun angles, and continued waiting. Somewhere during this extended psychological chess match, the German sniper made his fatal error. He moved slightly to adjust his observation angle on what he believed was Pavlichenko's hide. She killed him with a single shot. This was one of 36 enemy snipers among her eventual 309 confirmed kills. The Germans had taught their snipers every deception technique in their doctrine. They had not taught them how to defeat an opponent who possessed patience beyond what their training could instill. German sniper training created tactically competent marksmen who could be reasonably expected to achieve 40 to 60 confirmed kills over an operational career lasting 6 to 8 months before death, injury, or rotation. The Wehrmacht considered this an acceptable return on investment for the 3 to 4 months of intensive training each sniper received. The system produced consistent, measurable results. Official German records documented that the average Eastern Front sniper achieved approximately 55 confirmed kills before being withdrawn from frontline service. The best German snipers, like Matthias Hetzenauer, with 345 confirmed kills, or Sepp Allerberger with 257, operated for multiple years and represented exceptional outliers rather than typical performance. Wehrmacht planning assumed that most snipers would be killed or wounded within their first year of deployment. Survival rates for German snipers on the Eastern Front approximated 60%, meaning 2 in every 5 trained snipers died in combat. These statistics were known, accepted, and incorporated into German tactical planning as unavoidable costs of operating precision marksmen in high-intensity combat environments. Pavlichenko's operational timeline rendered these calculations meaningless. She recorded her first 2 confirmed kills on August 8, 1941, near Bielyaivka, when she shot 2 German scouts attempting to advance on Soviet positions. By mid-October 1941, when Odessa fell to Axis forces and her unit evacuated to Sevastopol, she had compiled 187 confirmed kills in approximately 75 days of combat operations. This averaged 5 confirmed kills per day over a sustained period, a rate no German sniper approached even during their most successful weeks. The mathematics were staggering. A typical German sniper achieving 55 kills over 8 months averaged 0.23 kills per day. Pavlichenko was operating at more than 10 times that efficiency. During the Siege of Sevastopol, from November 1941 to June 1942, she added 122 more confirmed kills over 8 months, maintaining an average exceeding 1 kill per day, even as German forces became increasingly aware of her presence and dedicated resources specifically to eliminating her. Her daily operational routine, documented in her later recollections, began at 0330 hours and continued until 2100 or 2200 hours, often with no food and minimal water. Over this time, a sniper can eliminate 5 Nazis, maybe 3, maybe none at all. It all depends on how the figures of the enemy are moving, she explained. On days when targets presented themselves, she might achieve 5 confirmed kills in 18 hours of observation. On days when German forces exercised proper caution, she might achieve none but would maintain her position. Regardless, because abandoning a high due to lack of targets was how careless snipers died. By May 1942, when she was promoted to lieutenant and officially cited by the Southern Army Council for killing 257 Axis soldiers, Pavlichenko had operated continuously on the front lines for 10 months, without rotation, without extended leave, without the relief cycles German snipers received as standard practice. Wehrmacht doctrine mandated rotation every 6 months to prevent psychological breakdown and combat fatigue. She had exceeded that timeline by 60% and showed no indication of reduced effectiveness. Her final 52 confirmed kills, accumulated between May and June 1942, demonstrated that even after nearly a year of sustained combat operations, her skills remained lethally sharp. German planning assumed snipers were expendable specialists who would burn out rapidly. Pavlichenko had become an irreplaceable strategic asset whose value increased with every week she survived. When mortar shrapnel finally wounded her on June 1942, forcing her evacuation by submarine on direct orders from Soviet High Command, her 309 confirmed kills placed her among the most successful snipers in military history, regardless of nationality or gender. She had achieved in 11 months what took German snipers multiple years or entire careers to accomplish. The cost-benefit analysis revealed an asymmetry that German logistics officers found increasingly troubling. Training a single Wehrmacht sniper required approximately 3 to 4 months of instruction at dedicated facilities, consuming resources that included experienced instructors, specialized ammunition, optical equipment, and the opportunity cost of removing a soldier from frontline duty for extended training. The total investment per German sniper approximated 8,000 to 10,000 Reichsmarks when accounting for all associated costs. This investment produced an average of 55 confirmed kills before the sniper was killed, wounded, or rotated, resulting in a cost of approximately 140 to 180 Reichsmarks per confirmed enemy killed. The Germans considered this excellent efficiency compared to standard infantry operations. By June 1942, Wehrmacht intelligence had compiled a specific file on Pavlichenko, tracking her movements, attempting to predict her operational patterns, and coordinating multiple assassination attempts. German forces had deployed at least 15 specially trained counter-snipers with the explicit mission of eliminating her. All 15 had failed, and at least 8 had been killed by Pavlichenko herself during the attempts. The resource expenditure attempting to eliminate one Soviet sniper included thousands of rounds of specialized ammunition, hundreds of man-hours of intelligence analysis, dedicated counter-sniper operations that pulled assets from other missions, and the complete loss of multiple, highly trained German marksmen. Conservative estimates suggested Germany had spent over 100,000 Reichsmarks in direct costs attempting to kill Lyudmila Pavlichenko, She had cost the Soviet Union approximately 300 rubles for her initial rifle, perhaps 2,000 rubles total for ammunition across her entire career, and zero formal sniper training investment since she had taught herself through survival. Her personal impact extended beyond the direct kills she accumulated toward 309. Among her confirmed kills were more than 100 German officers, men whose training had cost Germany exponentially more than standard infantry, and whose loss created command disruptions that affected entire units. 36 of her 309 kills were enemy snipers, each representing Germany's investment of months of training and thousands of Reichsmarks. One enemy sniper she killed allegedly possessed a logbook documenting over 500 confirmed kills, suggesting she had eliminated one of the Wehrmacht's most successful marksmen. German forces attempting to capture or kill her had diverted resources from tactical operations, shifted patrol patterns to avoid her known operating areas, and implemented costly countermeasures that degraded overall combat effectiveness. Soviet intelligence estimated that Pavlichenko's psychological impact on German morale in the Sevastopol sector was equivalent to removing an entire company from combat effectiveness. Soldiers who knew Lady Death operated in their sector, exercised excessive caution, reduced patrol aggressiveness, and demonstrated measurably increased stress indicators. The Germans were spending vastly more trying to stop one woman than the Soviets had invested in creating her. And by June 1942, when she was finally wounded and evacuated, they had completely failed to eliminate the threat. German High Command was beginning to realize they faced a problem that defied their doctrinal solutions. Superior training had not prevented their snipers from dying at her hands. Better equipment had not provided the tactical advantage their planning assumed. Systematic countermeasures had not reduced her effectiveness. By mid-1942, Wehrmacht intelligence officers were compiling reports that revealed an uncomfortable truth. The Soviets had produced, apparently through brutal natural selection rather than systematic training, a sniper whose operational efficiency exceeded anything German methodology could create. And Lyudmila Pavlichenko, with her 309 confirmed kills and her growing legend as Lady Death, represented only the most visible example of a phenomenon the Germans were encountering across the Eastern Front. For every Pavlichenko who became famous, there were dozens of other Soviet snipers who had survived the catastrophic early months of combat and emerged as devastatingly effective killers. The Germans had calculated training duration, equipment quality, and tactical doctrine. They were discovering too late that they had failed to calculate what happened when ideology, desperation, and individual will to survive created soldiers who fought by rules no doctrine anticipated. As German High Command grappled with the resource drain one Soviet sniper had created, Wehrmacht intelligence officers were compiling a file that would transform their understanding of the threat they faced. The revelation emerged gradually through multiple intelligence sources, converging during the winter of 1941-1942. First came radio intercepts of Soviet communications near Sevastopol, repeatedly mentioning a Lieutenant Pavlichenko in connection with confirmed kill counts that German analysts initially dismissed as propaganda exaggeration. Then, German units began reporting an unusual pattern. A specific sector of the Sevastopol defensive perimeter was experiencing disproportionate officer casualties, all from precision rifle fire, all from angles suggesting a single operator working multiple hides across a concentrated geographic area. The Wehrmacht established standard procedure for tracking high-value enemy combatants, and by January 1942, Pavlichenko's name appeared in German intelligence summaries as a confirmed threat requiring special attention. But the true scope of that threat became clear only when German forces captured Soviet documents during a local counteroffensive near Sevastopol in February 1942. Among the recovered materials was a commendation order citing Lieutenant Lyudmila Pavlichenko, for achieving 187 confirmed kills during the defense of Odessa, followed by additional citations documenting her continued operations in Sevastopol. German intelligence cross-referenced these documents with their own casualty reports from the sectors where Pavlichenko had operated. The correlation was undeniable. Specific dates mentioned in Soviet citations matched German records of officers killed by sniper fire. Locations aligned precisely. The timeline was consistent. Wehrmacht intelligence officers realized they were not dealing with Soviet propaganda inflation, but with documented operational reality. By March 1942, German command had assembled a comprehensive profile. Pavlichenko was female, 25 years old, a university history student before the war, and had accumulated over 200 confirmed kills in approximately 8 months of frontline service. She operated primarily as a lone hunter, worked extensively in no man's land, specialized in killing officers and enemy snipers, and had survived multiple wounds without being removed from combat operations. German High Command faced an uncomfortable calculation. One Soviet woman with a rifle had personally killed more Wehrmacht soldiers than entire companies lost in some engagements. The German response revealed an organization struggling to reconcile ideology with operational reality. Official Wehrmacht doctrine held that women were psychologically unsuited for combat, lacking the necessary aggression, tactical judgment, and physical stamina for sustained military operations. The Nazi ideological framework emphasized traditional gender roles, positioning women as supporters of male warriors rather than combatants themselves. Pavlichenko's documented effectiveness created an irreconcilable contradiction. German officers could dismiss her accomplishments as Soviet propaganda, but their own casualty reports confirmed the kills. They could attribute her success to luck or isolated circumstances, but 8 months of continuous operations suggested systematic capability rather than chance. They could claim she represented an anomaly, but intelligence indicated the Red Army had deployed approximately 2,000 female snipers, suggesting Pavlichenko exemplified a broader program rather than a singular exception. The cognitive dissonance manifested in how German forces chose to address the problem. Rather than acknowledging Pavlichenko through official channels, which would have required admitting a woman had killed hundreds of German soldiers, Wehrmacht units near Sevastopol adopted an alternative approach. They attempted to bribe her. Beginning in early 1942, German loudspeaker broadcasts began addressing Pavlichenko by name across the front lines. "Lyudmila Pavlichenko, come over to us. We will give you plenty of chocolate and make you a German officer." The messages repeated multiple times per week, sometimes daily, suggesting German command believed she might be persuaded to defect. The offers revealed several German assumptions: that Soviet soldiers were motivated primarily by material deprivation, that rank and status might appeal to female vanity, and that a woman who had killed hundreds of men might somehow be convinced to switch allegiances through the promise of luxury goods. The broadcasts continued for weeks, without response. Pavlichenko never acknowledged them, never altered her operations, and continued killing German soldiers at her established rate. The Germans escalated. By May 1942, when Soviet citations confirmed Pavlichenko had achieved 257 kills and earned promotion to lieutenant, German loudspeaker messages changed from inducements to threats. The tone shifted from paternalistic offers to explicit intimidation. "If we catch you, we will tear you into 309 pieces and scatter them to the winds." The specificity of the number demonstrated that German intelligence was tracking her confirmed kill count with the same precision as Soviet command. The threat was intended to terrorize, to break her psychological resolve, to make her understand that the Wehrmacht had identified her personally and allocated resources specifically to her elimination. Pavlichenko's recorded response, documented in her later accounts, was genuine delight. They knew her exact score. The Germans were so focused on her that they broadcast accurate tallies of her accomplishments to their own troops, ensuring every soldier in the Sevastopol sector knew precisely how many of their comrades one Soviet woman had killed. The psychological warfare had backfired catastrophically. Rather than intimidating Pavlichenko, the broadcasts elevated her to legendary status among both Soviet and German forces, transformed her into a symbol that transcended mere tactical effectiveness, and confirmed that the Wehrmacht had no operational response to her beyond threats they could not execute. While German command broadcast threats across Sevastopol's battle lines, Pavlichenko was conducting the mission that would bring her confirmed kills to 293. On the morning of May 27, 1942, she had identified a German sniper operating from a partially destroyed warehouse, approximately 600 meters from Soviet positions. The German was competent, patient, and had already killed 2 Soviet soldiers that week. Pavlichenko spent 11 hours in absolute stillness, observing his position, calculating his patterns, waiting for the single moment when he would make himself vulnerable. At 1720 hours, he shifted position slightly to observe a different sector. She fired once. This was kill number 293 of her eventual 309, and it was one of 36 enemy snipers she would eliminate during her career. By early June 1942, as German loudspeakers continued broadcasting threats that would never be realized, Pavlichenko had pushed her confirmed total to 309. Her perspective on the German propaganda efforts, recorded in later interviews, was characteristically blunt. "We didn't fight to prove anything to Germans. We fought to kill fascists. Whether they knew we were women, whether they feared us, whether they were humiliated by us. That was their problem to manage. Our concern was victory, and victory required their deaths." The discovery changed nothing about German tactical vulnerability and everything about German psychological cohesion. Pavlichenko continued operating with the same efficiency that had defined her previous months of service. German forces continued dying at her hands until June 1942, when mortar shrapnel finally wounded her severely enough to force evacuation. The broadcasts, the threats, the dedicated counter-sniper operations all had failed to reduce her effectiveness, even marginally. The Germans had identified their enemy, named her, tracked her, allocated substantial resources to eliminating her, and achieved exactly nothing except confirming to their own troops that a 25-year-old woman was systematically destroying their officer corps without consequence. Wehrmacht soldiers in the Sevastopol sector began referring to her as Lady Death, a nickname that spread rapidly despite official discouragement. The moniker revealed grudging respect mixed with legitimate fear. She had become something beyond a tactical threat, something that defied German doctrinal assumptions about warfare, gender, and combat effectiveness. And she was far from the only one. After the war, when Soviet and Allied interrogators systematically debriefed German prisoners about Eastern Front experiences, a consistent pattern emerged in testimonies about Soviet snipers. German soldiers, even veteran officers who had survived years of combat, showed visible psychological reactions when questioned about facing enemy marksmen. The accounts revealed trauma that extended beyond normal combat stress into something approaching existential dread. Unteroffizier Karl Becker, captured near Sevastopol in August 1942, provided typical testimony during his initial interrogation. "You cannot understand what it means to patrol when you know Soviet snipers are present. Every window becomes a potential death. Every pile of rubble might conceal a rifleman. You move, and you wonder if this step will be your last." "We lost 3 officers in 1 week to sniper fire in my sector. All headshots, all from positions we never located. The fear was constant, pervasive, inescapable. We began to believe they were invisible, that they could see us, but we could never see them. Morale collapsed under that psychological pressure. Oberleutnant Friedrich Hoffmann, a Wehrmacht sniper instructor captured in 1945, offered more technical perspective in his post-war debriefing. I trained German snipers for 2 years before being deployed to the Eastern Front in 1943. My students received comprehensive instruction, 3 months of systematic training in marksmanship, camouflage, fieldcraft, observation. I believed this preparation made them superior to any enemy they would encounter. Then I met Soviet snipers in actual combat. They moved differently than our doctrine anticipated. They showed patience beyond what we had trained. I personally engaged in counter-sniper operations against 3 separate Soviet marksmen over 8 months. I eliminated one. The other 2 are presumably still operating, as I never confirmed their deaths, and they continued inflicting casualties in my former sector after I rotated out. One of those Soviet snipers, I later learned from captured documents, was a woman. This information was difficult to process. I had killed 47 enemy soldiers in my career. A Soviet woman had likely killed more than I had, and I had failed to eliminate her despite training specifically designed to counter her tactics. The testimonies revealed the specific impact Pavlichenko had created. Hauptmann Victor Weber, captured in Crimea in April 1944, referenced her directly without initially knowing her name. There was a Soviet sniper in the Sevastopol sector we called the Ghost. We never saw her. I say her, because we learned after captures and intercepts that this operator was female. She appeared across multiple locations over months. Our intelligence tried to predict her patterns, but she showed no consistency. She would strike from one position, then appear 2 kilometers away the next day, then return to the original sector 3 days later. She killed at least 15 men from my battalion that I can verify personally. After the war, reading Soviet records, I believe this was Lieutenant Pavlichenko. Her 309 confirmed kills made her one of the most effective individual combatants on the entire Eastern Front. We never came close to eliminating her. She survived the entire siege and was evacuated before Sevastopol fell. The fact that one woman killed more Wehrmacht soldiers than some of our companies achieved in total enemy kills, well, the word humiliating does not capture the psychological impact. The pattern across hundreds of testimonies showed consistent acknowledgement that Soviet snipers, regardless of gender, had achieved tactical superiority that German training and doctrine could not effectively counter. Lieutenant Hans Richter, infantry platoon leader captured in 1943, synthesized what many others expressed less articulately. We were told Soviet forces were inferior, that their training was crude, that German soldiers represented the pinnacle of military effectiveness. Then we encountered their snipers. They killed our officers systematically. They operated in conditions we considered impossible. Extreme cold, minimal supplies, complete isolation for days. And when we learned some of them were women, including the most effective ones, it shattered our assumptions about this war. We had underestimated everything about the enemy. Their will, their capability, their determination. Pavlichenko's 309 kills represented more than statistics. They represented the failure of German intelligence to understand what we actually faced on the Eastern Front. The testimonies confirmed what Germans had discovered too late. Soviet snipers like Pavlichenko were not anomalies or propaganda fabrications. They were among the most cost-effective, psychologically devastating, tactically successful weapons deployed against Wehrmacht forces throughout the Eastern Front campaigns. Pavlichenko, specifically, with her 309 confirmed kills accumulated across 11 months of sustained combat operations, had personally eliminated more enemy soldiers than entire platoons achieved in some sectors. The German attempts to bribe, threaten, or eliminate her had consumed substantial resources and achieved nothing. And her effectiveness continued to haunt German survivors long after the war ended, preserved in testimonies that documented not just her tactical success, but the psychological impact of realizing too late that their ideological assumptions about gender, combat, and warfare itself had been catastrophically wrong. When the war in Europe ended on May 9, 1945, Lyudmila Pavlichenko's final record stood as testament to what Germans had dismissed as impossible back in November 1941, when Oberst Hartmann joked about history majors playing soldier. Her confirmed kill total reached exactly 309 enemy combatants, accumulated across 11 months of continuous frontline operations from August 1941 to June 1942. The number itself, 309, became simultaneously her legend and her vindication. The precise figure German loudspeakers had broadcast in their final threat to tear her into that many pieces. She had achieved 187 confirmed kills during the 2.5-month defense of Odessa, averaging more than 2 kills per day during some of the most intense urban combat on the Eastern Front. The remaining 122 kills came during 8 months at Sevastopol, where she operated in conditions that would have broken most soldiers within weeks. Among her 309 total, 36 were enemy snipers, men who had themselves been trained in the methodical German system and who died attempting to hunt a woman their doctrine insisted should not exist as a combat threat. Another 100 of her kills were officers, Wehrmacht leaders, whose deaths created command disruptions affecting entire units. The physical and psychological toll of achieving 309 confirmed kills defied easy comprehension. Each kill required Pavlichenko to locate a target, often from 600 to 1,000 meters away, calculate windage and elevation, control her breathing and heartbeat to the point of near meditation, and execute a single shot that would immediately reveal her position to every enemy soldier within earshot. Then she had to extract herself from that position, relocate to a new hide, and repeat the process hours or days later. She did this 309 times while operating in conditions ranging from -40-degree winters to summer heat that made steel too hot to touch. She survived being wounded 4 separate times, including the mortar shrapnel that finally ended her combat career by tearing through her face in June 1942. She operated for days without food, routinely went 18 to 20 hours without moving from her position, and maintained the absolute psychological discipline necessary to kill men whose faces she could see clearly enough through her scope to distinguish eye color. The USSR awarded her the Gold Star of the Hero of the Soviet Union, their highest military decoration, along with 2 Orders of Lenin. But the awards could not capture what it meant to have killed 309 human beings, one at a time, while knowing each shot might provoke the return fire that would kill her. To understand the magnitude of these numbers, context matters profoundly. The most successful German sniper on the Eastern Front, Matthias Hetzenauer, achieved 345 confirmed kills across multiple years of operations. Pavlichenko achieved 309 in 11 months. The average Wehrmacht sniper accumulated 50 to 60 confirmed kills across an operational career lasting 6 to 8 months before being killed, wounded, or rotated. Pavlichenko exceeded their entire career totals within her first 4 months of combat. Soviet male snipers who survived the war typically recorded between 150 and 250 confirmed kills across multiple years. Vasily Zaitsev, immortalized in films and books, achieved approximately 242 confirmed kills during the Battle of Stalingrad. Pavlichenko exceeded his total, despite operating for a shorter period and being evacuated before the war's end. Among the 2,000 female snipers the Soviet Union deployed, she stood alone at the top of confirmed kill counts. Her 309 represented not just individual marksmanship, but sustained operational effectiveness that most soldiers, regardless of gender or nationality, never approached. The German miscalculation about Pavlichenko specifically mirrored their broader failure to understand the Soviet sniper program's strategic impact. When Wehrmacht intelligence finally compiled complete assessments in 1943, the numbers revealed a cost-benefit disaster. The Soviet Union had invested minimal resources in sniper training. Most female snipers like Pavlichenko received no formal military instruction and learned through brutal natural selection in combat. The rifles they used, Mosin Nagant bolt-action weapons, cost approximately 300 rubles to produce. Ammunition expenditure per confirmed kill was estimated at fewer than 5 rounds on average, as snipers took only high-probability shots. Total Soviet investment in the female sniper program approximated 10 million rubles across the entire war. German expenditures attempting to counter Soviet snipers included specialized counter-sniper training programs established in 1942, deployment of thousands of soldiers to counter sniper operations, development of new tactics and equipment, and the cumulative cost of losing over 50,000 soldiers to sniper fire on the Eastern Front. Conservative estimates suggested Germany spent over 500 million Reichsmarks combating a threat the Soviets had created for a fraction of that cost. The asymmetry was staggering, but the strategic impact extended beyond economics into psychological warfare that degraded German combat effectiveness across entire sectors. Soviet snipers, and female snipers particularly, created pervasive fear that affected German tactical decision-making at every level. Infantry patrols moved more cautiously, reducing operational tempo. Officers avoided exposed positions, degrading their ability to lead effectively. Soldiers experienced chronic stress from knowing that any moment might bring the rifle crack that preceded death. German units operating in sectors with known Soviet sniper presence reported measurably reduced morale, increased psychiatric casualties, and diminished combat effectiveness. The fear was not irrational. It was a realistic assessment of facing an enemy who could kill from distances where return fire was impossible, and whose presence was often revealed only by the casualties they inflicted. Pavlichenko's 309 kills represented the apex of this psychological campaign, but thousands of other Soviet snipers contributed to an atmosphere of dread that pervaded German frontline units. Wehrmacht doctrine had no effective countermeasure beyond the counter-sniper operations that proved costly and often unsuccessful. The Soviets had discovered a form of warfare that exploited German tactical weaknesses, and the revelation came far too late for Germany to adapt effectively. After June 1942, when Soviet High Command evacuated Pavlichenko from Sevastopol, her war took a dramatically different form. Rather than returning her to combat after her wounds healed, Soviet leadership recognized her propaganda value and reassigned her to rally Allied support for opening a second front against Germany. In August 1942, she arrived in Washington, D.C., becoming the first Soviet citizen received at the White House. President Franklin Roosevelt welcomed her personally, and First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt invited Pavlichenko on a nationwide speaking tour that would fundamentally shape how Americans understood Soviet contributions to defeating Nazi Germany. The American press initially treated her as a curiosity, asking condescending questions about makeup and uniform styles while largely ignoring her combat record. Pavlichenko's patience with this treatment lasted approximately 3 weeks before her famous rebuke in Chicago. "Gentlemen, I am 25 years old, and I have killed 309 fascist invaders by now. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" The audience erupted in applause. Her bluntness, her refusal to perform femininity for Western expectations, and her direct challenges to American complacency made her tour remarkably effective. She returned to the Soviet Union in late 1942 and spent the remainder of the war training new snipers, passing her hard-won knowledge to the next generation of Soviet marksmen. When the war ended, Pavlichenko resumed the life that German invasion had interrupted. She completed her history degree at Kiev University and worked as a researcher for the Soviet Navy until 1953. She married, though her personal life remained largely private. She maintained her friendship with Eleanor Roosevelt, who visited her in Moscow in 1957 during a trip to the Soviet Union. But Pavlichenko also struggled with what modern psychology would diagnose as severe post-traumatic stress disorder. She had killed 309 human beings, had watched countless comrades die, and had survived wounds that should have been fatal. The psychological scars proved more difficult to heal than the physical ones. She suffered from depression and alcoholism for much of her post-war life, conditions that Soviet society poorly understood and inadequately treated. On October 10, 1974, Lyudmila Pavlichenko died of a stroke at age 58. The Soviet Union honored her with commemorative postage stamps in 1943 and again in 1976. She was buried with full military honors in Moscow's Novodevichy Cemetery. For decades after her death, Pavlichenko's story remained virtually unknown in the West. Cold War tensions ensured that Soviet war heroes were dismissed as propaganda fabrications rather than documented historical figures. Western military historians, when they acknowledged Soviet snipers at all, frequently attributed their effectiveness to numerical superiority rather than individual skill. Pavlichenko's 309 confirmed kills seemed too extraordinary to be credible. Only with the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 and subsequent opening of military archives did Western researchers gain access to the documentation that verified Soviet accounts. German military records corroborated the casualty reports. Testimony from surviving German soldiers confirmed the fear Soviet snipers had created. Cross-referencing Soviet and German sources revealed that, if anything, Soviet propaganda had understated rather than exaggerated sniper effectiveness. By the 2000s, historians had reconstructed Pavlichenko's story with remarkable detail, and her legend entered Western consciousness through books, documentaries, and films that finally gave her the recognition she had earned 6 decades earlier. The story of Lyudmila Pavlichenko transcends its historical moment to reveal universal truths about warfare, underestimation, and human capability. The Germans who laughed at history majors playing soldier made the fatal error of confusing unfamiliarity with inability. They assumed that because Soviet methods differed from German doctrine, they must be inferior. They believed that women, regardless of skill or determination, could not match male soldiers in combat effectiveness. These assumptions cost them dearly. Pavlichenko proved that determination and skill matter more than doctrine and training, that underestimating any enemy creates exploitable vulnerabilities, and that prejudice blinds even sophisticated military organizations to threats that should be obvious. Her 309 confirmed kills were not merely statistics. They were 309 German failures to take seriously an enemy who violated their assumptions about gender, warfare, and combat capability. The German officer who dismissed the Soviet sniper program in November 1941 never lived to understand what Pavlichenko proved. That courage requires no particular equipment beyond a rifle and ammunition. That skill can overcome superior training when that training becomes rigid doctrine. That determination makes physics itself negotiable. Her 309 kills were not just confirmed eliminations of enemy soldiers. They were proof that the Germans had calculated everything: training duration, equipment quality, doctrine, resources. Except the variable that mattered most: the will to survive and the refusal to be underestimated. In muddy trenches and bombed-out buildings, armed with a rifle, her enemies considered crude and operating under conditions their doctrine deemed impossible. Lyudmila Pavlichenko became the deadliest female sniper in history. And she did it while the men she was killing broadcast messages promising to tear her into 309 pieces, never realizing that every threat they made only confirmed they had already lost to an enemy they never saw coming.